Welcome, Val Flight, to Payroll and Prosecco. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming and taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us. For those who don't know me, my name's Mel and I am the director and founder of the Payroll agency and your host here at Payroll and Prosecco. I can't remember the beginning of it, so I'm sure we're on episode 5, so I'm pretty sure everyone knows it by this point. But I wanted Val to come on to the podcast to talk about her journey and the challenges, because I think you get to a certain point in your career and people don't really know how to get to that next level. So I would love for Val to kind of talk about how she got there and her journey. So welcome, Val.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell us about your journey. How did you get into payroll? How did this all start for you?
All right, so like most people, I fell into payroll. I didn't actually envisage I'd have a career in payroll, definitely when I started my full-time career.
Mm-hmm.
So I started actually with the Reserve Bank, and I'm happy to kind of name them as very much a data analyst at that point. And then obviously good with numbers, got kind of asked to go to payroll, and have stayed in payroll ever since.
Mm-hmm.
So my journey's actually been quite varied, predominantly around investment banking. So banking and finance has been a big part of my career, with a stint or 2 stints in construction.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been, I would say, lucky, but also worked really hard to get to where I am.
Yes.
So, it has had lots of hard work put into it. But putting up your hand along the way and asking for more exposure, asking to be able to do more, definitely has played a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's around, I like to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
I like to be kept busy.
Yes.
I'm probably not a very good bored person, and, ants in pants would be the way that my family call me, because I can't sit still for very long without having to do something constructive. So, I know that I probably, pestered some of my ex-managers around giving me more challenges, more tasks to do. And I've got a love systems. So I like to understand how the systems work, but I also like people.
Mm-hmm.
I did spend quite a bit of time as a HR business partner, and not so fond of the emotional side of things, right?
Yeah.
Like managing a team is fine, but when you're managing emotions day in, day out, not my cup of tea. Numbers don't have emotions,
for sure.
So much easier to deal with in payroll.
But I think it's also important to have the HR understanding.
Absolutely, and that's how you can join your dots.
Yes,
so
for sure.
People constantly say to me, how do you join the dots? How do you know what to look out for and things like that? And for me, the 6 years as a HR business partner played a really big role in that, in understanding the life chain events that an employee will go through. And, in one of my organisations, we're a very small HR team. So when you were a HR business partner, you did everything from recruitment, and I was still the payroll manager. So I kind of did the whole thing from start to finish.
Yeah, great.
Which gives you a great understanding of how the business works, but you also build really strong relationships. But you also then understand how your HR system, your payroll system are so integrated.
Correct.
And why it's so important to have really clean data and, having it as automated as you possibly can, but still with the human touch.
Yep. And I think HR is kind of like the central key stakeholder to the entire business. So if you really understand the HR processes and get familiar, you'll just know the whole business, and it's better overall, isn't it? Because payroll, obviously, we had Brendan on, and he was talking about analytics with payroll and things like that, and how it does benefit the entire business, right? It's not just payroll.
It does. And, that's a really good point, because, payroll plays a critical part in it, but you also need to have a really strong partnership, with your HR teams. And that's really important from a business perspective, but also from an employee perspective, right? So it's really handy when you can speak the same language as your HR partners. You understand the policies, you can explain those in kind of simple terms as well. And from an employee experience perspective, that's kind of a really nice touch where they're not being handed off between teams.
For sure. And it's also good to be pally-pally with HR, because I hear that if you're not, they can make life a little bit harder for you than it needs to be. So I think it's better to keep HR on side. Sorry, HR.
So I've been really lucky that way in terms of doing some pretty big system implementations. So that gave me a really good understanding of, the requirements and what we need, and making sure that it's a system and a process that works for the team. Understanding the pain points that your team goes through is also critically important. And then, I had the luxury of moving my family overseas, which still shocks people when they find out that, I spent a couple of years in the Philippines. For me, that was probably one of the biggest step-ups in my career.
Great.
Like, it's a real defining moment.
Yeah,
and that's going from an Australia, New Zealand, background with a lot of knowledge in that space, then all of a sudden having to know, globally payroll. It obviously gives you a bit of appreciation for the different cultures, the different rules in the different countries. We are definitely very complex here. So, the award space, which is something that comes up all the time, is super complex, and we're quite unique that way compared to other locations. But then other locations have their own issues and complexities.
So, for sure.
There's definitely some countries out there that are super easy. And,
Well, I think the UK is notoriously very, very simple payroll.
Yeah, it would be. I'd go Singapore's pretty much the same as well.
Yeah.
You've definitely got some countries, and then you've got some really complex countries like, your Germanys and your Japans, and even your US and even New Zealand, right, with their annual leave rules. So there are complexities in every country. Definitely some countries are much easier, where we're very lucky in Australia that we've got a lot of information at our fingertips, and I think that's a really important point for anyone trying to build a career in payroll, is to use the knowledge that's out there. You look at the websites we've got, you look at podcasts like this and webinars and how many breakfasts that you've got and industry talks and things like that. That's super critical and super important. You don't have that in all locations. So there's definitely a huge advantage that we get a lot of free information, and you can join all of these groups and leverage off that, where you don't always have that in other locations.
That's fair.
And it's really important, and I feel like for anyone that really wants to kind of grow in that payroll space is always be curious, right? Always kind of want to learn. The minute you start not wanting to learn anymore and you feel like you know it all, it's typically where you get left behind, right?
Oh, yeah, and it really does segregate the ones that end up in sort of your level roles, the ones that just sort of stay in just like a BAU payroll manager role. I'm so hot in here. Sorry.
It is very warm.
It's really warm
but it's muggy in Sydney today. So
it's so warm in here, sorry. I think that, that's where you go from, you're just your operational payroll manager, and then they do get kind of left behind. I think I've actually got an event tomorrow to try and help people out of that level, because, and this is why this podcast is so important, because I get, like, people ask me all the time, like, how do I get to the next level? What's the next stage for me? And for you, obviously, it made sense. As you said, your luck played a part, but you got offered opportunities and were involved in opportunities that continued that growth for you. So I think, but there's people in here that are in Sydney that are just a bit stuck. So I'm trying to help them be a bit more strategic with a bit of like educational stuff. So we'll get into it. But yeah, you obviously got a great opportunity in the Philippines.
I did. And, spent 2 years there. And I have to say, we had a few ups and downs from a family perspective. We had a 7-year-old and a 17-year-old. The 17-year-old wasn't 100% sure if he wanted to come, didn't want to come, and so on, right? So which was pretty fair. We did give him the option to stay back in Australia and live with my parents, and he decided no, he'd come and check it out. Gave us grief for the first 6 months, and, I'm very open about that, so it's not going to shock him when I say it. We sent him home for his 18th birthday, back to Australia, and obviously he realised he'd kind of moved on from his friends, and his girlfriend had cheated and all the rest of it. So it kind of made it a little bit easier for him to come back with a very different attitude in terms of, okay, I'm going to give this a go.
Yeah.
I do remind him he met his wife while we lived there.
Stop.
They got married around, it's been 7 years that they've been married. So, yes, so we do remind them constantly that, if I hadn't kind of edged him to come along, and they would never have met.
Everything happens for a reason. I'm like the biggest personal believer of that, because I think you do, when you get, my life has fallen into place certain ways that way. But were you in Manila?
We were in Manila. We were in Makati, so right in the middle of the business district.
Yeah, I've been there.
It's been lovely. It's the only time in my whole career, or my whole life actually, that I have lived so close to work that I could actually walk to work and walk home from work. It was one of the requirements that I did put in when we moved there, is I do not want to commute.
The traffic,
in
the traffic.
exactly.
The traffic.
So, it was I was really lucky that way, but I also it's the only opportunity I've had to grow a team from scratch. So I hired every single person in the payroll team, in the global payroll team over in Manila. It's the only time that I've been able to handpick a team, right? So every other time I've like come into a team, or, I've joined a team and the team's already been established. I've also had really great teams, and quite often when I've joined an organisation, I've been told the payroll team's broken, payroll's broken, and to be completely honest, none of them have been really broken. It's just that they either haven't had the love, or they haven't actually had the guidance, and they've had no one to champion for them or to help build up their skill sets. And, every team that I've had, including my current team, they're very passionate about doing the right thing for their employees, right? So they're very passionate about getting it right and, making sure everyone gets paid correctly and all the rest of it. But they just need some guidance and some of that, I guess, love, right, would be the right word.
I think that's one of the key things that I'm noticing. I've got a client, she's just taken a candidate on, and I advised her against it. I said, this particular candidate is a bit like notorious on the market. Like I don't think, but it was like a temp, short term. I was like, she was like, she's working out really well. And I was like, interesting. I said no. I personally wouldn't have represented her. Blah blah blah, and she was like, maybe she just needed a bit of love. Maybe she just needed to be nurtured. And I was like, to be fair, very good. I think payroll managers are kind of notorious of being very busy, and not having the time to do that nurturing and loving. And I do think that that's the key issue we have, and the reason the market's so bad for talent right now. Because we've gone round at the moment expecting people to have this particular skill, but no one has taught it to them. Yeah. So I could talk about that for ages, because I get asked for these massive big roles, and I need a senior payroll. I'm like, there's been no one to teach them. So anyway.
Yeah. And that's a really good point that you make, and I've learned a lot from the leaders that I've had, right? Both good and bad. I've definitely learned things that I would never do, but I've also learned things that I go, actually, that's a really good way to approach people, and everyone, you got to remember that you've got a team of personalities. Like not everyone's the same.
Yes.
Everyone's going to react differently. Your message might still be the same, but how you deliver it to one person compared to another person might be very different. Yeah. You've also got to take the cultural background into it. I've always had very culture diversive teams. Yeah. And that plays a part to it, what I might feel is, quite confronting, and the way, in the way that somebody will use the language, for them it's natural, because that's how they talk at home, and, from where they come from. So it gives you a bit of empathy as well, like, that most people come from a place of good. Yeah. Sometimes they don't always get it right. And, I remember with my Manila team, we did a whole culture training piece, because the way they use English and the way we would understand it from an Australian perspective was very different, right? And so we had to do a bit of a cultural, when you say this is how we're going to perceive it. Yes. So which came to a horror, because for some of the stuff it was like, oh my God, I just say that all the time, and I didn't realise that's how you would, that's how you would perceive it, or that's how you'd respond to it. So, sometimes it is just bringing somebody aside and saying, do you understand that, this is not how we would perceive it? Tone of voice plays a huge part of it as well. And some people don't realise that they're abrupt, but that's just because that's the way they talk, and they don't realise that for somebody who's on the receiving end of that, it's taken very differently. So it's things like that. It's some of those soft skills. Writing emails. Absolutely. If you can have the conversation on the phone, have the conversation on the phone. Because the tone of the way you perceive something through an email that's one thing I've learned very heavily through. I have to put smiley faces, because I'm like, I need you to know that that's not an aggressive. I'm trying to be nice. Yes. I'm sorry. It's something I'm learning. Obviously, I'm starting the business and making my first hire. We've got an interview for a junior resource to come in as well, and I want to be everyone's friend. That's my natural personality, and I'm like, you've known me for a long time. I'm like, you can't be. No, you can't be. You can't be. As much as I want to be, I can't be. And I'm like, that's the whole learning thing for me.
I have to be the boss at some point. So yeah, it's hard.
It's hard, but you can still be the boss and still be friendly and nice and so on. But yes, you definitely need that distinction between, leader and your team.
Yeah.
Because it can blur lines, and it's good when it's good, but when things go a little bit, you have to have that hard conversation.
Yeah.
It then becomes really tricky.
Boundaries.
The boundaries piece.
Yeah,
it's so important.
Sure.
So important.
How many people did you have in the team in Manila?
40 odd.
Oh, stop. Oh my God. Okay.
So
yeah,
I've had
right.
some big teams.
Yeah, wow.
My last 3 roles, including my current role, like my teams have all been above 40. So
wow,
they are large teams. They, I've had outsourcing, I've had offshoring, I've had, fully in-house teams. But they've all been pretty big teams, and that's relevant to what's happened in the industry as well. So if I look at some of my current team setup, I've got a payroll data analytics team, which is headed up by Brendan, who you've had on the podcast.
We love Brendan.
I have my payroll operations team, so they do the day-to-day running of payroll. Like they deal with employee inquiries, they do all of the filings and things like that. And then I have a payroll governance team, so payroll governance and compliance team, they do all the compliance work. And then I have like a kind of payroll projects, and it's a very small team of 3, but they typically will look at systems upgrades and be kind of the SMEs on those. And we've had to pull them out, and they've all come from the ops side, the bit like the ops side. And we've been very lucky in my recent team that we've had no turnover. People have been there forever and a day.
Yeah. We were saying that yesterday because I saw Brendan last night. He was like, people never leave, which is good. But because I've got a friend, and I think I mentioned it in the last podcast. I've got a friend who works. When I caught up with you, my friend was in the reception, and she has been with Westpac for years. She actually was a Hayes recruiter and was on the Westpac account, and then they poached her. And she went internal but then she's been there for years now, and she just bounces around every couple of years, and she gets seconded onto different projects, and she's like, I'm constantly entertained. It's such a great place because it's so large. No matter what it is you want to do, you can get involved in. So I can imagine why no one leaves, because if you want to try something else, why would you ever leave a company like Westpac?
Exactly. And I've had some of the best people that have actually had no payroll background come into the team, right? Yeah. And you can teach somebody payroll skills. What you can't teach them is the customer service, the empathy, the behavioural stuff, right? Yes. Either they have it or they don't have it. So for me, it's about getting people that can fit into the culture and want to learn. If somebody wants to learn, you can teach them pretty much everything. But what you can't really change is somebody's personality. So that's a really big factor. And we've had some really successful people come into the payroll team. They were bank tellers, right? People could just go, but they don't have payroll skills. And I'm like, no, but they have all of the customer empathy and know how to deal with, complaints and things like that. And so therefore they have the right mannerisms, and I can teach them the payroll side of things.
And they know what it's like to be the person being paid in that particular business. So they'll know. No, it's good. Have you found the challenges of the different personalities in the large has been a big thing? Have you got any horror stories of big clashes or anything like that?
Oh, definitely seen some big clashes. Not in my current organisation, which is nice. In the team pretty much get on really well. And I think they've just been working together for such a long time, right? So they know each other very well. But I have had some pretty big, strong personalities that have clashed, and that's always hard as a leader, in terms of just getting down to what is the actual issue at hand. And that's where, sometimes you've got to just go, okay, that person's very emotional at this point in time. Let them calm down and then really get under the hood and just not take it at face value, because typically what you see at face value is actually not what the underlying issue is. Yeah. And then trying to find that common ground, right? And I always say to people, you're not going to like everyone that you work with. No. We don't expect you to be best friends with everyone that you work with, but there is a level of respect that you need to have. So, I'm not asking you to socialise at lunchtime. I'm not asking you to socialise after work together.
But get your work done.
But you need to learn to work together, and, you need to be respectful to each other while you're at work,
Because I think it's really important for managers, especially because payroll is, it's hard, and it's really highly emotional when things, especially for the manager who's being told that they're doing things wrong. And I keep hearing that You don't ever get told you're doing a good job. It's always, oh, you're doing a really bad job, or when something goes wrong, which I'm assuming could get to you, right? Especially if your team are not maybe constantly making similar mistakes and ongoing. It could get very frustrating. But I do think it's very important because for the managers to go into management training.
Yes.
Because I have noticed, and that's why I put together this operational to strategic leader, because I speak to payroll managers that are in their first or second management role, and they just don't have that. They don't know how to be diplomatic with people. They don't, it can get they're the ones that get highly emotional. They can shout, and it's just, it's not appropriate.
No, it's not.
So that's, I think, is a very important, and it's going from being a really good payroll processor and knowing everything start to finish, top to bottom, to then going into a manager role, especially if you go into with a few people. It's a whole different skill. It's really important to go on training, I think.
It's really different. And I always say to people, do not think that your only way to get to the top of your career is to become a people leader or a manager.
I know.
Right? And people automatically
Some people should not
be. Yeah. And people just go, oh no, but to get a promotion, I have to become a manager. And I'm like, no, there's other career paths that can get you to the same place where you become strategic. You can manage systems, you can manage processes. You don't need to automatically manage people. And I think that's across multiple industries.
Same in recruitment.
Not just payroll. Yeah, I just think it's people just assume I have to become a leader. I don't like managing people. I find it hard. It doesn't come naturally. But they feel that that's their only way to get to where they want to go.
And earn the more money. They think that, it's the same in recruitment. I've worked with some horrendous managers over the years, not necessarily my managers, but, I can see the way they manage other teams, and they were just really good billers. Yeah. And then they got forced into a management role because you need to train the juniors to get to where you are. And it's the same thing. Like, you don't have to be a people manager in recruitment. You don't have to be a business owner. You can. There's other avenues to be a really successful recruitment consultant. So it's the same thing. Trust me. Yeah. So you were in Manila for 2 years?
Manila for 2 years, then came back, and that's when I joined the construction industry for the first time. And one of my, two of the managers that I had worked with previously had moved across to this organisation. So joined them and, had the luxury of all of a sudden having payroll teams scattered across Australia, which was a bit strange, even though these companies had been bought by Lend-Lease, and I'm happy to call them out. They had acquired a whole stack of organisations but had left them on their own platforms and
it was messy.
Their own payroll teams or scattered across Australia. So one of my first roles was actually to bring them all in because they had created this finance shared services. So that was actually the first time that I kind of sat in finance from a payroll perspective and not in HR. It had bounced around. That's what I got told before I joined. So I was in HR, then went to finance, and it was in finance when I joined. Now that organisation, yes, it had multiple payroll platforms and different pay cycles and so on, and still kind of does to a certain degree. But they were going through quite a bit of change, but they had a culture. From a culture perspective, the payroll teams did work extremely hard, but again, there was like very different personalities in different teams.
And that's where I met you the first time. Because the bit I was a key recruiter, I loved the guys. I loved them. I was up in Chatswood every week taking someone for coffee.
Yeah, and we had 2 offices in Chatswood, and I'd go between the 2, and one payroll manager would let the other one know that I was on my way, and I'd go out to ride, and it'd be exactly the same thing, and they'd be on their best behaviour while I was there, and then once I got in the cab, it would go back. And it was just like, I was just like, oh my God, what have I got myself into?
Multiple systems, because you had the Procedure teams, you had the Chris 21 teams. Frontier was relative. I think it was a new Chris 21, wasn't it? And it was constantly down.
Yeah, so Chris 21 was probably the one that, I guess I was probably comfortable with because I had a Chris 21 background. So, I was quite comfortable with that, whereas Procedure, that was the first time I'd kind of looked at it and I was just like, oh God, okay. But just the unionised side of things, right? Like you kind of go, even your unions play a very big part of it, and, the number of EBAs and EAs and all of a sudden. And I remember being interviewed by the CFO at the time, and she was just like, oh, you don't have a huge amount of award background. We're very heavily unionised and you've got a lot of EBAs, EAs and awards. And I said to her, well, if I can learn legislation for 50 countries, I'm pretty sure I can pick up an award and learn it. I'm happy to sit down and read them all and understand them. And, she was just like, okay. And obviously I got the role, but it was a beast of a thing to come into. Did a couple of years with them, and there was no budget to do the payroll transformation side of things from a system. So the aim was always to get a one-time and attendance platform across the board and get one payroll system across the board. And they put in Workday in between my two stints, and so there was this whole thing of no, we need to do a transformation, and they'd blown the budget on the finance system. It was just like, oh Val, there's no budget, and I had the opportunity to then go to Singapore with another organisation. Yes. So they had reached out and was just like, oh, we've got an APAC role. Would you be interested? We're looking for somebody with APAC experience. It's based out of Singapore. So I packed up my family for the second time. I'm just very lucky. I have a husband who's very happy not to work and, be a house dad and house husband. And, he was just like, yeah, absolutely, let's go for it.
Singapore's amazing.
The eldest son was much happier because it meant that his girlfriend at the time, now his wife, could travel quite freely between Philippines and Singapore because they don't need visas, and so much easier than coming to Australia, once or twice a year. And so that obviously he was quite happy to go across and try and find work in Singapore. And, that gave me I started off as the APAC head of payroll and then took on the APAC benefits piece. Now the benefits piece was like, oh, this is very different to payroll. A lot of, especially in Asia where you do have things like, health insurance and health claims and, BCP and all of that. You own kind of all of that part of things, including employee care and the rest of it. So that gave me a very different viewpoint on that side. But I also had then teams in Hong Kong and Japan, and I had a massive big team in India, and we used to kind of travel. But I have to say that all the organisations I've worked with have always kind of provided support, right? I've never really kind of hit a barrier where they've just gone, no, absolutely not. They've all provided some level of flexibility, but I think it also comes down to proving yourself as well, right? So
for sure.
I always say to people, I've got 30 years of payroll background, but if I was to go into the next organisation, I might as well have none, right? Because I need to reprove. You got to prove yourself.
Yeah,
and sometimes that's part of the issue with people moving around is they just expect that their new organisation will know how great they are or what they've accomplished prior. But actually you're starting again. You've got to prove that you are the right person for the organisation.
I also feel that they're not going to bring someone like yourself in if they're not willing to make the changes and do what they need to do to fix it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you've created a brand in yourself by that point, and they're not going to bring someone like yourself in if they're not willing to do what needs to be done. How would you advise people that are brought into, I guess, these positions? How would you advise them to fight for what they need? I know we can go into obviously detail, but we've obviously just come up, but like, it's a big thing that I hear a lot, banging the head against the wall, what would be your advice or takeaway for that?
I think you've got to go into it without making people feel guilty that they haven't done the right thing, right? So I think it's this whole thing is sometimes you can go in and you go, oh, all of this stuff worked in my old organisation. I'm going to bring all of this stuff into this new organisation, and they're just going to accept it. I think that's absolutely. You should definitely use some of the historical stuff you've done where you know it works and it's the right thing to do, but you need to do a bit of a sell first, right? If you go in heavy-handed, you'll literally hit a brick wall because people will just put their defence up because what the way they take it is, well, you're just telling me that I've done this wrong for the last 10 years, 20 years, whatever it might be. And that's not what you're saying. It's just saying that, there are things that we can improve on. This has worked for you in the past, but, in other organisations they've moved on and this is how they're doing things. And you need to be able to sell the benefit. Because if they can't see the benefit, you need to, exactly. You need to talk the language, you need to build the relationships, you need to go in baby steps first rather than all guns blazing, right? And really understand the landscape of things. So in the prior 2 organisations, and I think it might have even been 3 organisations, the first thing I've done is actually surveyed and sent out what's working with payroll, what's not working with payroll, and gotten some real in-depth feedback, and that was to HR business partners, it was to heads of HR, it was to finance, like anyone who had a touch point to payroll. I just asked them to give me some really honest feedback about what works, what's not working, what would you like to see payroll doing, right? Like, how can we support you and your business? And so that opens it up, because you're going, well, tell me everything that's working and not working. Now, you do read it with a grain of salt, right? Because everyone likes to tell you what your team's not doing, right?
Especially in payroll.
But it does provide, oh my God, that this person's willing to listen, right?
Yeah, and getting an understanding of what your stakeholders, where they're at with it.
Exactly.
With you. Yeah, it makes sense. It does make sense.
And then you do the same thing with your payroll team, obviously. You know, you ask them what's working for them, what's not working for them, and, you know, what parts of the business they're really struggling with, to then get under the hood of, okay, well, why is it not working? Like, what's happened that the relationship might be bad? Is it because you had personality clashes at some point? And it's an opportunity to reset, right? You're coming in fresh, and sometimes you just got to go, all right, I know I'm going to have to put in 120, 130% effort, and I'm not going to get anything back. Like, I'm just going to constantly kind of maybe hit some brick walls. But what people will then do is go, oh, this person actually really wants to help. Like, you know, and they're willing to listen to what I have to say. Doesn't mean you have to do everything they say.
Well, because I think the thing, like, you know, what payroll people, when they go into a new company, and you've literally lit a light bulb in my head, because I'm like, I reckon they do that. I reckon payroll managers come in and they go, nothing works, we've got to do it. And then you've got people go defensive, which is normal. You've got a CFO that probably goes, oh God, this is going to cost so much money. And then you've got HR going, oh God, this is going to be so much effort. And then they go, and you're like, well, and it's an easy way to get people to dislike you from the jump, because you've just told them everything they're doing is it's right, you know. And I think you're right to build the trust, build the relationships, get these guys to like you and respect you. So then when you say, we might need to change this, then they're more open to doing those recommendations, because they're like, actually, Val knows what she's talking about. Let's do it. Because I said my advice to people is always, like, when did you speak to your CFO about it? Like, did you corner him before he goes to the loo? Like, you know, and they were like, yeah, I just call him, and then he was heating up his lunch. And I was like, he's not going to listen to you talking about a $2 million system that you think is better for the payroll when you've cornered him when he's heating up his lunch. Like, it needs to be strategically laid out and talk the language of that particular stakeholder. If it's the CFO, financially, talk about benefits, the risk, all of those things.
Return on investment, everything that everyone wants to know, right? Like, people typically are happy to invest, whether that's time, money, whatnot, as long as they know what they're going to get in return. Right? And that can be things like just, you know, risk mitigants. It can be, you know, simplification. It can be the employee experience. It can be a whole range of things, but you really need to be able to sell. You need to understand what the benefits actually are, and it's got to be, there will always be an underlying benefit to your team, but that's not what you're selling. Yeah. Right? If you're just selling it, that it's going to make it easier for your team, no one's going to buy into it.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? Because they go, great, but I'm not going to get anything out of it. What's the organisation going to get out of it? So I think it's also the way that you sell it, right? It's got to be at the organisation level. So how is this going to help the organisation? How is it going to make the organisation a better place than what it is today? And then, of course, there's always going to be a benefit to your team, because you know what those benefits are. You're not going to introduce something that's not going to benefit your team. But that's not your selling point.
And that's the way the analytics can come in really handy to understand the payroll analytics. Because when Brendan was talking about it, I was like, every company needs to know this. Like, we talked about, you know, where there's lack of education in certain things, if there's issues with the onboarding, you know, are you training people on the systems properly? Like, there's all certain things that cost so much money to a business when it's done incorrectly, in the masses. But yeah, it's very interesting, because I think that the payroll people are very passionate, and they know what's correct and legal, and they know what's the 100%, this is the only way for this thing to be done. But no one else in the business understands it and cares the way the payroll person does. You know, so, and it doesn't mean, like, I'll get people calling me all the time, as I said, clients call me on drives home and like want to bitch to me about and I'm always like, there's a better way for you to communicate your issues, and I'm trying to teach. I mean, what do I know? Do you know what I mean? But I just know, because I have conversations with the likes of yourself and other people at your level. That's why I was like, this podcast is really going to be important for them, because they will need to know we're in a period at the moment where governance is at an all-time high importance. Systems are not working properly. You know, there's just so many things that are going wrong really badly in their teams, and they don't know what to do and how to fix it. So it's hard. It's really hard.
It's hard, and it's putting yourself out there, but also saying, look, you know what, I don't know, but I'll go and find out, right? Because you won't know everything. Like there's still things that I don't know, and I'm learning every day. But it's being willing to go and find out, and it's been willing to understand how that actually then, what does that mean for your organisation?
Yeah, it's crazy. So you went to Singapore, and how long were you in Singapore?
I went to Singapore. I was in Singapore for a couple of years. My husband got ill and we had to move back. So he was out here visiting family and so on, and had a heart attack. So I'm happy to kind of share that. That's all right. And so we then moved back, and I was really lucky that the organisation I was with was just like, no, just do your job out of Sydney, we don't care.
Okay, good.
Which was great because it meant I didn't have to find another job while I was trying to relocate at the same time. Spent quite a few months working out of St. Vincent Hospital, doing the kind of commute from the coast, and I live up on the Central Coast. So, but just knowing that my boss that was in Switzerland was fully supportive, the head of HR in Asia was supportive, the fact that I didn't have to find another job, and my team were amazing in terms of, yes, it meant that I was doing some really weird hours because my team was offshore and I was the only one in Australia. But that was really important, and for me I was really grateful. And then Lend-Lease came back and was just like, oh, do you want to finish what you started, right? We've picked our systems, but would you like to come back and execute? And I was just like, okay, it's not very often that you start a strategy, you set a strategy, and you get asked to come back and execute on that. Now they had already picked their systems and so on, so it was very much around the implementation side of things. And taking the team on that journey, which was great. It was nice to come back to working Australian hours, right? And kind of feeling like you had a bit of a work-life balance again. And then obviously finished that up, and then kind of have now and have been at Westpac for 5 years. So, and for me, I'm at that point in my career that it's really important to share the knowledge and try and get people to be excited about a career in payroll, and all the different types of opportunities you've got. But you do have to want that, and you need to put some effort into it as well. It's just not going to land on your lap. And, like I said, I've been very lucky, but it's also because I've made a point of trying to prove myself in every role that I've had.
Absolutely.
That I was the right hire. And I think that comes back to, my childhood and how, I grew up, and, my family. And I saw my mum and dad work really hard. Like my mum was at home mum right up until I went to high school. And then she went and did her childcare degree and went and worked in childcare. And dad had always worked super hard, was a labourer and that, and nothing came. Like it was just like, no, I get paid a salary, you work for your salary, and, you do what's the right thing to do for your organisation. And so that was kind of ingrained, in both myself and my brother. And so for me, it's always been not just what can I get out of the organisation, but what can I give the organisation.
Correct,
and that's super important, and has definitely been a really important factor for me, is that for me now in my career, it's about leaving the organisation a better place than when I came in.
Yeah. And I think the resilience, it's come up a few times over the last couple of months with a few people, but like how many people just like fall at the first hurdle compared to those who fight. Yeah. I've been someone who's fought to get to everything. Like if I took no for an answer, I would not be here like doing what I'm doing. But I was speaking to a client just before, and she was like, oh, yes, the work was too hard, so she left. And I think there's a level of like, yes, the work's too hard, but I've got a job to do and I've got to fight. And when you get first told no for the systems and we're not got the budget, it wasn't like, well, okay, well, it's, well, no, what can I do? Like, how else can I help? What other challenges? Talk about some of the challenges that you faced then. Obviously, we talked about, budgets and stuff, which is very annoying.
Yeah.
What other challenges do you think you faced?
I think for me, I've faced a couple of challenges, probably more so in getting the buy-in, right, in some organisations. And not so much now. I think that's where the whole wage theft and all the regulatory stuff has really helped from a payroll perspective. But definitely early on in my career is getting people to understand why these things were important. And that's definitely a challenge, because unless you can show the organisation that you're saving them money or, bringing a benefit, it's a hard conversation to have.
Yeah.
I definitely went through a couple of challenges very early on in my career where it was very much a boys' club, right? And, if you hadn't gone to a certain university and you didn't have a certain degree, then it could potentially, impact your career. So I've definitely had some of that along the way, which kind of surprises people, but it also creates a bit of a thick skin and go, no, I'm going to prove you wrong, right? I remember one exit interview that I did very early on in my career, and they were like, oh, it's so great that you're actually leaving the organisation because you wouldn't have actually gotten very far in this organisation. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to prove this person wrong, right? And it just added fuel to the fire kind of thing.
That makes that's how what that does to me. It's like when I hear that stuff, I go, you watch.
Yeah,
you watch.
Exactly. And look, I don't know whether it was just because they were bitter that I was leaving,
Probably.
when you reflect back on it, 20 years later down the track, you kind of go, oh, I wonder if that person was just a bit bitter that, I was leaving.
Or do you know what it probably was?
Adds.
Looked at you and went, she's going to be better than everyone here.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But anyway, it was just one of those things where I was just like, right, that's not what you say to somebody in an exit interview. That's a learning for me, But I also think the culture of the organisation is super, super important as well. So I have worked in organisations where the culture was not very nice. And I think people just underestimate how hard it is if your values are not aligned to your organisation.
Yeah.
And pay is great and, people chase money, but the culture of the organisations, the opportunities that you get at an organisation is just as critical, especially if you do want to grow your career. And I've been super lucky with the companies that I've gone into. In most cases, the culture has been really good, but it's also working out, that if it's not, it's just not. And it's not a reflection that you weren't able to change that organisation. There's certain things that you can change, and there'll be certain things that are ingrained that you can't. Yeah. And being able to know when that time is and saying, you know what, this is not going to change and I'm not going to change my own values. So that's something that I've kind of really stuck to.
Yeah.
I treat people fairly, and yes, it might mean that, it's taken me 20 years longer to get to where I needed to get to, but I've done it with my whole conscience. I haven't stepped on anyone's toes. I haven't thrown people under the bus. I haven't taken credit for other people's work. So I've done it with my integrity in place. I can sleep well at night.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
And, that for me is super important. So, there are a couple of times in my career where, people were like, oh, but if I'd known that was your background, I would have treated you nicely. And I'm like, nah, well, that's the whole reason why I don't tell,
don't talk about it.
Yeah. It's because for me, it's all about, you should be recognizing the hard work that I do, not, where I was born or who my parents are or anything like that.
Correct.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, that was super important. And yes, it meant that I might have missed out on an easy career path.
Oh, right.
The
ride. I think there's a difference between the working the hard or riding the nepotism wave or whatever you see that other people you see around doing, and you just think, oh God, nothing. I mean, I'm saying I've left. Before I started my agency, I was obviously at other agencies. I've been doing this for a long time, and the values piece was so important to me. And when I've hired my new guy, obviously no one knows who he is yet, so I don't know when I'm going to release this. We're not releasing the news, but that was the first thing I said to him. We do things properly. We are authentically ourselves. We never do anything for a fee that you keep you up at night. Because I go to bed knowing that everything I do is to the best of my capabilities and doing the right thing. I had a client call me just then. She goes, hey, another agency and sent me these names. And I said, well, I didn't send that person to you because they left a previous role for a reason that I didn't think you would respect. So I didn't send them to you because of that. And she goes, I respect that. I could have sent that and I could have got the fee, but the chance of that person leaving during it wasn't worth it. So if I miss out on a fee, I miss out on a fee.
Yeah.
It does it, you know. I go to bed every night knowing that I've done the best I can and I'm not screwed anybody over, and I don't see people as money.
Yeah.
And it's the same in payroll, because you
Yeah,
can get into bed with some shitty people and do some shitty things. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the values piece, I think if you put good into the world, good comes back.
Yep. I'm a big believer in karma. So you treat people like you want to be treated. And I think that's a really good segue into, from a management point of view, actions speak louder than words.
Correct.
So your team are always looking at what you do, not what you're always saying. So for me, that has been a huge piece of my management style is I will get my hands dirty. You can speak to any of my team members, current team members, ex-team members. I'm somebody who will get into the trenches with them.
Yeah. Good.
Even today, I'm more than happy to get my hands dirty. You know, I will sit and do reconciliations with them.
That's so good. I love that.
If we find our problems together. I go, a problem shared, is a problem halved, is what they say. But it's really important, because for them, it's like they go, oh, I can rely on her. Yes, I'm super busy. My team, when you were talking about busyness, like I am super busy, and, I have meetings typically back to back. But my team will know that if they ping me, I will respond back to them. Yeah. I will always make time for them.
Yeah.
And if they've got a problem, we'll solve it together.
Yeah.
Like they're not left to have to try and work it out for themselves.
Because I think people at your level kind of just like sit on the throne, as I like to say. Like there's people that sit on the throne and they don't understand what it's like to be a payroll admin person who's just kind of figuring it out. And I think a team your size, you do need to know what every single one of them is doing in order to then effectively lead from the top, right? Like there's leading from the front, but not getting your hands dirty. And then there's leading from the front and being like, I'm showing you I can do it too. Let's do it all together. Like that's why you are where you are, because you've done that, but you've proven your worth. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
What else? Is there any other challenges you can think of? I would love to know about the stakeholder piece, because I think at the moment, the way payroll is, it's really, it's at an all-time hard. And what's some tips to target those? We've obviously spoken about it a minute ago, but I want to really give some key tips to have these. Like, so say if your stakeholder's a CFO, how would you structure that conversation with that person? And then, alternatively, if your leader is a HR manager or a HR director, how do you do that?
Okay. Oh, that's a bit of a hard question. So typically, let's take finance to start off with, right? So for me, when I have a discussion with any of our finance people, it's very much around the cost to the organisation, right? So, for example, if you've got a whole stack of overpayments that are going through where people are not doing the right thing and it's causing an overpayment and so on, that is money going out the door that the organisation doesn't have to really pay.
Yeah.
So for me, it's around making sure you talk the same language as them, right? That all they're interested in is the dollars.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it's bringing that to light. It's bringing to light things like, okay, well, if we are on the front page of the newspaper, what's the reputational damage? What's the dollar value to that, right? What's the dollar value of having to go down remediation? And everyone would have seen,
Yeah, for sure.
So, that's out there, and, that's historical and things like that. But for them, it's the dollars. So you need to speak the same language for them, right? When you talk to HR, it's all around the employee experience.
Okay.
Right, so very different.
Take note, everyone.
It's very different. It's employee experience. They want to know, okay, how does it add to your employee value proposition? How are we making things simple for our employees so they get it right? And so it's a very different, because yes, they're still interested in the money, but that's not the driving factor.
Yes.
Especially when you're going for things like budgets, for system changes and things like that. So the CFO will want to know return on investment. What are we going to save? Is it going to save headcount? What are the benefits that I'm going to get financially? Whereas you go and speak to a HR person, they're going to want to know, well, what's the employee experience? What's the employee going to get? Are we going to make it simple for our employees to get it right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you've got to speak their language.
You've got to speak their language and give them the benefits. So the overall benefits of what you want to try and achieve. But then what you'll do is you need to tailor it to who you're having that discussion with, right? And it also means understanding their pain points, because if you can try and remove some of the pain points, and so that's the whole, having that conversation up front before you even think about putting a business case together, is go and have those discussions. So your finance people will have issues with the GL, for example, or they'll have some pain points of, doing reconciliations and stuff like that with the payroll information they're getting today. Go and find out what their pain points are. Go and sit with your HR team, find out what their pain points are. What are their employees telling them? What are their businesses telling them? What's working, what's not working? What would they like to see from a system perspective? Don't forget your own team.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're going back to what we said before, building the trust. Because if they trust you, then that conversation and learning about them is easy. Like not easy, but it's going to be easier. Because if your HR director trusts you implicitly, like there's no bars, whatever. When you come to them and say, I've got this issue, we need this new system. I need an additional headcount. My team is suffering this way. They're going to believe you. And I think the stakeholder management is huge.
Massive.
Huge. And I think people don't do it enough.
Yeah.
They don't, because it's time consuming, and they're like, well, it's payroll. I've got to do my job. You can't effectively do your job in this market without having every stakeholder eating at your hand, basically, because it is expensive. Your budget that you got for headcount will exceed, because no person is paid what the HR think they're paid, or the CFO gave you, or the systems are probably $1 million more than they wanted to pay. And I think, it's you need them to trust you that you're doing the right thing for the business. It's a really good point, because I hear it every day. It's probably my number one thing I hear from managers at the moment, banging their head against the wall, because they know what the right thing to do is. They know the right system. They know how many people they need. They know they need a remediation person because they've discovered something, or they know that they need someone to come in for compliance because the workload's too much. They can't do it, and we're making mistakes. And it's just something I hear about all the time. What about, similarly to getting a seat at the table?
What table? I got asked that question at a breakfast one day. Val, can you tell us what table? Okay, I'm like, any table. Try to get a seat at any table, right, within your organisation.
Because it's not a back office function anymore.
It's not a back office. And then people always go, oh, is that the board table? No, it doesn't need to be.
No.
Like,
it could be a lunch table.
It could be a lunch table. It could be a steering committee. It could be a forum. It could be a working group. Just get yourself involved in those groups. And that means putting yourself out there, making sure that, if there is a working group that's looking at a policy, for example, make yourself part of that, right? Because typically most things will touch payroll at some point in time.
100%.
Right? And so if you can get in there early and you can get to understand what their pain points are and so on, you can also provide advice upfront in terms of, well, yes, absolutely, this can be done in a payroll system or a HR system, whatever it might be. Or actually, no, it can't be done. And these are the reasons why. But have you thought about doing it somewhere else? So you've also got to come with an alternative. And that's really hard for payroll people to think outside the box, because we are very black and white. And sometimes, unfortunately, you do have to step into that grey area. And people are not comfortable going into the grey area because it's not a yes or a no answer. It's not definitive. But sometimes there's really creative ways to still get the outcome that the business wants, but without actually creating a risk to your payroll function or to the way that you process payroll.
Such a good point, because I'm just thinking in my head now, like, when we talk about the seat at the table, we assume it's a freaking boardroom table. We assume that it's the big conversation that they're having. Go and do it in another setting. Get in front of them in another way. And this is the stakeholder. It's the confidence. This resilience. It's these skills that they need to be having. I talk about this all the time. When I first got into payroll recruitment, your payroll manager was your auntie who sat at the back office, and she had
in the dungeon.
Correct. There was no windows.
Not to be seen.
No windows. It was the back office. It was, they were sat in a corner on their own. They had a couple of people in what they called the time cards, what they called back in the thingy cards, whatever. And that's what they were doing. And then the payroll went out. That was it. Even when I used to recruit for you guys at Lend-Lease, that's what your payroll people were doing. They were doing the timesheets. They would but that's not what it is anymore. No. And your back office function, you sitting in the corner, is not good enough anymore. You need to come to the front. You need to be the voice. You need to be standing there in front of people and being like, that is not okay. Obviously in a very diplomatic way, don't scream. I know people that do scream. But saying, I need to have a very serious conversation with you, and can we get a group of these people together? Call the board. obviously not the official board, but get the CFO, get the HR director, you organise it, put it in the diaries, I need to talk to you. We've got a situation, I need to discuss it with you, what you're thinking, you know, I've got my idea, but I want to run it past you first. Take control, spearhead the conversation.
And you need to take that ownership piece. And I think that's where people get a little bit, I don't know if I can, or I don't know if they will trust me, or I don't know if they will understand. But if you don't try, you'll never learn, right? And the more you put yourself out there, the easier it actually gets. I won't lie. Every new organisation you go in, it will be challenging for the first 12 months. It's you're literally proving yourself. But it's also getting in there and helping them. So they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
All right. It's something that I say all the time.
And often they don't know anything about payroll.
They don't know anything at all. And so you go to them and you say, you need to do this. And they know why they need to do it. They just don't know how to do it. So we're also not very good at teaching people the how to do something and how to do it properly, and then giving them the understanding of why it's so important to do it properly.
Correct.
And sometimes that means that you need to go and sit with somebody or go and train a group of leaders. And you know, my team have been doing that when we rolled out timesheets across the board. They're actually doing physical training. They will go and sit with a leader and help them physically. You know, they'll go out to a branch and help a branch manager out. And it's just like, well, we have this whole notion that people will just know what they need to do. And especially when you're in a large organisation or in any organisation that uses self-service, is typically where you see this kind of behavioural piece in it, where we just go, oh yeah, it's all self-serve, and we just expect that a new leader coming into the organisation is going to know how to do it, what it is, why they need to do it, how you know how often they need to do these actions, and we just have this expectation that somebody's going to tell them. And so typically that's where you see little cracks appear, because people go, oh, no one told me that I had to do it that way, or no one showed me that I needed to do it that way, or why do I need to do it at all? And then once you explain it to them, you can see they have that kind of light bulb moment. Does mean that sometimes you have to literally put yourself out there and go, all right, I'm going to teach you, because if you do, then you know that there's more chance I'll get it right than to continue the way that you've always done it, which is, oh no, that's, you know,
for sure.
It's a leader's responsibility to go and do that. You go off and do it.
Yeah. But then you complain when the information comes through and it's
incorrect.
And
it's incorrect, right? So I always say to my team, a little bit of effort up front might mean a whole stack of no rework at the end, right? So pick your battles.
Yeah,
like, yes,
for sure.
sometimes you might think that it's extra work and extra effort up front, but think of it when they get it wrong, how much effort it is for you to go and fix it, right? So sometimes it's actually better front loading your efforts and then getting the reward at the end.
Proactive rather than reactive.
And
well, I always say, like, to new managers, like, you can even like go and take a box of like donuts and introduce yourself, because and it's a conversation starter. Go and introduce yourself. You know how many payroll managers go in their first day and they sit down and they're like, you know, and they're like, oh, you know, I don't really know what's going. You have to spearhead it. You have to take control. Yeah, it's really good. But it's really good because I think that's at the moment, I think the issue is the new generation of payroll managers aren't being taught by the likes of yourself. They're being taught by the ones that were sat in the back office, you know, so they're at this point where they know that it doesn't work. That's not the right way to be anymore. But they're like, oh, I don't really know. Like, you know, so that's why I'm trying to connect people the best I can. And these podcasts are so important because people can listen to it and go, oh, that's a really good idea. I'm going to do that tomorrow, you know. I love the question, because I obviously sent you set questions, but we're just going with the flow. But I really loved the question about how you deal with the stress. Like, what's your decompression? Because I work 24/7 and I'm trying to find a new way to decompress, because I can't. This is not sustainable. But I noticed that payroll people are very the same. You know, they log on first in the morning. They used to be active and go and do their thing. What do you do to keep your mind a bit more chilled?
All right, so I'll tell you the good things that I do and probably the not great things that I do, right? And it comes down to, I guess, what's also happening in my private life as well, like at home, like home life, right? Because you can't differentiate between work and home life. So that's a bit of a myth that you have your work self and your home self, right? Like typically they will overlap. I crochet, so that'll make people laugh. And, you know, we even started a little crochet knitting club. at work.
That is so pure.
Within our people services team, which is quite funny. So I do crochet quite a lot, and I find that quite therapeutic. But I think it also shows that I'm a payroll person because you're counting stitches, right? Yeah. And so there's still a counting factor to the hobby that I have. So I do that. I used to play quite a bit of sport. Not so much anymore. I do walk still and try to go for runs as much as I possibly can. Sometimes better than others, some weeks better than others. Definitely when I'm going through a lot of personal stress and whatnot, definitely a couple of glasses of wine at night. So I wouldn't say that that's the best way to decompress. But, everyone has a little vice, right?
Everyone's got their vice.
We do have a bit of a joke around, people owing me cases of wine for the amount of stress that they've caused over my career. So that's a bit of a bit of a joke, right?
Or champagne.
So, yes, champagne. But for me, it's around family time. Definitely weekends is typically where I like to kind of just log off and not log on if I don't have to. Though, having said that, I am a Virgo, so I do like being prepared. So typically on a Sunday morning while everyone else is asleep, I wake up at the same time, no matter whether it's weekdays or weekends. So I'm an early bird. I will actually get myself set up and smash out a couple of hours first thing Sunday morning. And then by the time the rest of my family get up,
family time.
It's all family time. I've got all my kids are adults now, but it's important for us to have for me to have that kind of downtime.
Yes.
As I've gotten older, surprisingly, I have gotten into a bit more gardening, which
I
kind
love
of mirrors
that.
my mum and dad, which I
to
always
do
said, which I was like, oh, this is a bit boring, but now I actually quite like it. And COVID probably did play a big part of it because we were growing lots of veggies and stuff like that. So I still do like my veggie patch.
What have you got? What's in your veggie patch?
Well, at the moment we've got quite a lot of herbs. We've got this massive big rosemary tree, it's gone wild, and we've got a massive big bay leaf tree as well, which I didn't realise that I probably should have put in pots instead. But anyway, it's fine. But we do have a lot of herbs. We've got a lot of tomatoes at the moment. They're green, so I'm really hoping across some fingers they're going to become red tomatoes at some point. But we eat lots of salads and stuff. So
Yeah.
we try and keep stuff that we eat rather than grow stuff that we don't. We're big chilli people, so we do have quite a few chili plants because we love spice, and I think that's got to do with living in Asia for a while. Things have got to be spicy.
Something about a chili plant it even looks great.
Exactly. So that's for me. That's also a big piece. We do love our food. Well, not so much me, but I do have a full family of foodies. So food, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, nice.
Goes around food. So we do go out and eat out quite a bit on weekends. And then it's really I've just realised in the last probably 12 months or so, for me, it's actually being at home. I've become a bit more of a homebody. And have no issues in saying no to people. Catching up is great, but when you've been full on all week, is just having that sanctuary at home.
Yes.
And just going, you know what, I just want to sit on the lounge. I'll crochet for a little bit. I'll read a book. Yeah. I'll go outside. I'll sit out in my egg chair out the back. And, it's all stuff like that. And where I just go, oh, yes, this is the best weekend where I've just been at peace, and not felt guilty for not going out and doing something. Yeah. So for me, that's the real decompressing piece, right? And just knowing, but also seeing the signs. So at the moment, I've just joked with somebody in the office actually earlier today saying, oh my God, 4 weeks to go until we shut down. And I'm running out of steam. It's been a pretty big year and I feel like I'm rolling into Christmas.
That's what I literally just said. I was like, I've got 2.5 weeks and I am crawling to it. I just I think finding your peace, is what people, and I think setting boundaries with work, because I think the reason someone asked me yesterday, why do I like recruiting in payroll? Because I had my social last night and someone asked me why do you like recruiting payroll? And I was like, I respect you guys, right? Because I work 24/7. I don't think I could ever recruit for a market that, 9 to 5 and they log off. It wouldn't resonate with myself, whereas I'm passionate to try and get you guys to do the best they can, the best people in whatever. But I think boundaries for you guys is key, because there's never enough time in the day. Yeah. There's always something that's going to be needed to be done, and the burnout happens when I'm not joking. I get clients emailing me at 2 a.m, 3 a.m, and they're like, "Sorry, I've just got to this," and I'm like, it is 3 a.m.
Yeah.
It's unique. You can't do this. And I think setting that, how would you advise people to do that? Like, because it's not easy. It's not easy.
And it's really easy to slip back into, wouldn't say bad behaviors, but into, behaviors that you might have had before. I think it's really setting the boundaries when you first go into an organization, right? And you need to also, if the organization expects you to work 12-hour days, 14-hour days, 16-hour days, you need to take that into account when you're deciding that that's what you want to do. And there'll be different parts of your life, right? I've my kids now all adults. Like, I have no issues in sitting on the lounge in the evening. If I need to finish something, I'm more than happy to have my laptop sitting on my lap. Yeah. Hubby's watching the cricket. I don't mind it, and we're still sitting together. He's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing, and, it's fine. But it's also making sure that you've got that, when you're crossing that or getting close to your own line. And, you'll go through different parts of your career where it's really important and you're willing to do the extra work and you know that it's worth it, but it's not sustainable. Right? So you've got to really think about it. And there will always be ebbs and flows, right? I kind of go, it's just the natural world of payroll. And I think in a lot of careers, to be honest, is that you will always have really busy or something will happen. And yes, it's all hands on deck and it's long hours and all the rest of it. But if that becomes the norm, that should be a really big red flag, right?
Oh, for sure.
And it comes down to, again, what we were saying earlier around the importance of company culture.
If they don't care that you are burning, I shit you not, I've coached a payroll manager into having that conversation with their boss. I told her, put the time in the diary. This is the business case we're going to put together. I coached her from top to bottom and how she was going to, and I was so sure that person was going to come out with a solution, because she was like, I need an additional pair of hands, blah, blah, blah. They said, cop it or leave. Yeah. And I was shocked that person, she called me and she was like, I don't know what to do, so we're going to move her. But some people, they don't care. That is their culture. Yeah. Their internal culture is to work yourself to the bone. Yeah. But if your boss is on $500K a year and you're on that, and it's just, you can't. You got to pick the battle and you just got to leave.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? Because, for most of my career, I've been the main breadwinner, right? So it is a hard decision to make, but it's also not sustainable. And your own body will give you clues of when you've gotten to a point where you'll either burn out or, there'll be some alarm bells that it will ring, right?
Mine's the sleep. I just can't sleep. My brain won't switch off.
Yeah.
And I go, that's enough. I'm not relaxing enough to sleep. Like, my brain is so chaotic.
And also, you've got to realise that when your limit has been hit, where you're no longer doing the best that you can possibly do, right? I'm an early bird quite often, like not so much anymore because I've got a great work-life balance at Westpac. Like, that they've got a very good care culture, I will say, from an organisation standpoint. But I know I do my best work first thing in the morning. So if I've got something that I really need to smash out, I will get to 9 p.m. and then I'll be like, no, I'm parking it, because I know it's going to take me 3 times longer to continue it tonight than if I get up at 5 a.m. and do it at 5 a.m.
Very good point. Yeah.
And so you got to know when your most optimum
that's really
are
important.
To work for yourself,
and
just go, it's okay for me to stop. I still get it to my boss when they want it, right? Like, if they want something at 9 a.m., they'll have it at 9 a.m., but I may do it at 5 a.m. It's not going to be at 10 p.m. at night the night before.
Yeah.
They'll still get it on time, but I know that it's going to take me half the time first thing in the morning when I'm fresh, and it's where I know that I'm best than it is to kind of continue through the evening going, oh my God, I'm just so tired. Yeah. And you know that you're going to have to probably rework it in the morning anyway, because when you go to read it in the morning, it makes no sense. And you go, oh my God, what was I thinking? And so you just got to be able to know, like, what your best work style is. Yes. And just work it into the expectations that somebody might have of you.
I did that a few weeks ago. I think it was my accountant, and I was trying to figure something out, and my brain was so fried. It was 9 p.m. and I was emailing my accountant. And I was just trying to make sense of something that he asked me to. And I was just like, sent this question. And he came back in the morning and I read it and I went, Oh yeah, but my brain just wasn't working at 9 p.m. When I looked at it at 7 a.m. the next morning, I was like, that wasn't even that hard to figure out. My brain was just absolutely fried, and I couldn't. And then I was like, I'm really sorry, that was just me. So I've learned the hard way with that as well. And I think people need to know in themselves. Also, I always like to remind people is like, your company, like if you, like people will sacrifice their time with their family. Obviously you said your kids are older now, but you know, if you're a payroll manager listening to this and you've got young kids and you're feeling like you're not spending enough time with them, you have to understand that your family needs you more than your work does. And if you're working to the detriment to your quality of life with your family, something needs to change. And I find that a lot, you know, they go, it's all right, you know, I'll just do a couple more hours or whatever. Or I've heard of payroll managers missing really serious doctor's appointments because they've got a project due date. It's just not okay. No, it's not okay. You need to look after yourself.
And that's where you do have to look after yourself. And I remember I've had a manager that actually reminded me once that, you know, at the end of the day, your company's there while they need you. Mm-hmm. But when they don't need you, they have no issues in getting rid of you. Whereas your family's always going to need you.
Correct.
Right? And it's been really interesting because, you know, my boys obviously got so used to seeing me working that with the organisation that I went to Singapore with, we didn't have laptops.
So you had to be in the office.
Which was super funny. Well, you could use your own device at home. So you definitely could use your own device at home. But they were like, I got home from my first day being in Singapore in the office and they're like, where's your mobile phone? Where's your laptop? I'm like, oh, no, I don't have one. And they're like, what do you mean you don't have one? And then, like, my boys are quite funny. They're like, oh my God, that means that you're now going to want to know what we're watching on TV or you'll want the remote. And now we're going to have to fight over what we're going to watch because normally you'd be working and you couldn't care less what we're watching.
That's so fun.
Oh, okay.
Like, damn it. They got so used to you working. Oh, well, I mean, fair. Like that's, there's agencies out there that are the same. They don't believe in you working at home. You do your 9 to 5 or whatever it is. And then you close your laptop and you go home. Well, you close your computer and you go home and you actually have your evening. I've got a couple of clients that I recruit for that are like that. They say we there's no working from home. Like if you can work from home on your work from home day, but you leave the office, you close your. We don't want you. No emailing, no logging. We can see. We don't want you logging on. There is no work. We need you to enjoy your evenings with your family. And they do. There's a lot. That's why your values align to the right company and time of your life, right?
Yeah. And I definitely think, like, you know, COVID played a part of it because it's very hard when you're at home to have those boundaries. Having said that, though, I also find that knowing I don't have to commute in, that I can do my washing in the morning, like, you know, so it is a balance. You know, I've got a lot of mothers and so on in my payroll team, and having just that flexibility of being able to go, okay, today's my work from home. I can go to the school assembly, not have to take the day off. I can be flexible. I can get a load of washing on before I even start my day, know that I'm actually at home for dinner. Yeah. Like just taking that pressure off. Yeah. Like for me, that's really important as a leader. Like that's an extra benefit that you can provide without them having to feel the guilt, right? And I always go, you know, like when I first started my career, you didn't have work from home. Like there was no such thing as working from home. You were either in the office or you took leave because it was no
COVID.
Option, right?
It created that. Well, we had to work from home, so it created the capability for us to work from home. Because before, same as me, I had a mobile, but there was no laptops. You had your desktop computer. That's where you worked. And then if you wanted to continue working, you stayed in the office until 9 p.m. You just didn't go home, right? And that's probably why we drank so much in recruitment when you're a rookie, because you're there until 9 p.m. and then you're like, I just need a glass of wine. And it creates that kind of like toxic lifestyle. But I think COVID was great, but it's kind of gone the other way. I think that people are just, what people need to understand is it's a privilege. It's not a right. And if some companies go too far the other way, they're like, no, 5 days a week, you're back in the office. You know, I need to see you because I don't trust you. And then there's other clients that are like, yeah, we'll give you that flexibility until you burn us. And then if we find that you're not online, then we're going to have a conversation. So I do think the flexibility, for me, I'm the same. Like, obviously I work for myself, but I've got a team now, but I need that flexibility. I didn't get into 11:30 today because we had the event last night and I needed a couple of hours and I didn't get out of bed until 8:30, which is not me. I'm normally an early bird as well. Not as early as you. I know you're really early, but I just needed the morning to get myself, you know, brain together. And I believe in that. That's what gets you the best results in all teams.
It does. And you got to trust your people. I always say, if you can't trust your people, that's your problem, right? Like you've got a bigger issue to deal with than giving somebody flexibility. There's an underlying issue there. But it all comes down to outcomes, right? So for me, it's like, as long as my team are performing, they're providing the outcome that I'm expecting them to do, I'm not a clock
As long as the
watcher,
people are getting paid.
Exactly.
As long as people are getting paid and paid correctly, and we're not causing any issues, and we're not doing anything illegal. Do what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the right way to do it. What tips do you have for people that are trying to up and come in their career? So if you're, where you were, say, you're payroll manager, you're a payroll manager, first or second role. What tips do you have to break that, to get to that next stage, so break that ceiling?
Be brave and ask for more, really kind of push the boundaries in terms of what you're responsible for, what you're accountable for. Be willing to take accountability.
Yep.
Right? Most leaders, most organizations, if somebody's willing to take accountability, they're willing to give you a go.
Yep.
You've got to be wanting to take that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Trust that you'll be able to do it. You might not have all the answers, but trust that you can actually do it, because that goes a long way. Because a lot of the times it's actually proving you can actually do more.
Yeah.
So that would be my biggest tip. And I see it quite often, is that people go, oh, I don't know if I can do it. But if you don't give it a go, you'll never be able to do it.
It's true.
Right?
It's so true.
And, I have been thrown in at the deep end on the basis that, I've had some leaders that believed that I could do it. And I've just gone, well, if they can think I can do it, I can do it. Yes, I've gone home and gone, oh my God, what the hell have I just agreed to, right? And had that, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to get this done. But you find a way. And it's the whole sink or swim piece, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you've just got to trust that you do have the ability. It might be a little bit hard. It might be uncomfortable. But that's actually the growth area, right? So if you don't get out of your comfort zone, you can't grow.
That's how, when I opened the business, I literally, a sink or swim, I went, I'm either going to do this and it's going to be a success, or it's going to fail and I'll just get another job.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to do nothing significantly bad is going to happen to me. I might lose a bit of money, but I'll be okay. And I think that mindset of, if I don't try, I'll definitely never do it.
Exactly.
So do it, put yourself out there, risk it, and you might prove yourself that you're actually so much more capable than you even thought you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be curious, right? Like, that whole learning mindset is such a big piece.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't have that drive to want to learn, then you're going to stop developing at some point in time.
Yeah. And payroll is just so ever changing.
Oh,
you need to keep yourself on it.
I get asked all the time, like, Val, do you really still love payroll? I'm like, yeah, it's changing all the time. It's the one area that it's constantly changing.
Every month, every quarter, every year.
There's new rules, there's new policies, there's new, whatever it might be. There's always something new to learn. There's always something new to go for.
Yeah.
There's so much possibility that still has not even happened, right? Like most organizations, everyone's talking AI, but it's completely untapped, right? It's like the payroll data analytics. It's very immature in in a lot of organizations.
Most
right?
organizations. We were talking about it last night.
There are some massive, big opportunities out there. You just got to be willing to go, you know what, we're going to give it a go.
Yeah. And even in the roles where they are right now, these opportunities for development are endless. Talking, as you said, if you can get a conversation going with these leaders, talk about AI. Talk about the passion, because I'm sure that most companies would rather keep you as your payroll manager. If you've been there for a few years, you've proved yourself, they love you, and you say, I'm keen to learn about data analytics. I want to implement that into the business, or AI is really interesting, or whatever. I'm sure they'd rather keep you and engage you in that. Obviously, if you start going, I need $5 million to implement.
Oh yeah, well that would be different.
Correct. But in personal development, when it comes to AI, and I know there's chatbots and all these things that you can. It's just endless, and it's so exciting. People are so scared. And I did an episode with Lena Davis on AI, because they're at Mervac completely have implemented robotics into their payroll, and it's incredible, and it's so exciting. And I'm excited for you guys. We're trying to do it in recruitment. I'm like, no, I still paper based, but I think the payroll is just ever changing, and it's like, yeah, you're either going to ride the wave with it and you're going to become completely automated, and you guys are going to become analytically, your brain will be analytical, and you'll be able to do far more than just what paper. It was number crunching. It was literally just timesheets. And now it's this incredible, I love, I could talk about payroll all day. I love it.
And you become more advisory, right?
Correct.
So that you'll quickly see a shift in the way that people engage with you. And it's more around, now they go, Val, we need your advice. Like, we're thinking of doing this. So, you become an advisory partner to your organisation or to your business, or you become a consulting partner to your organisation or business. And they come to you asking you for questions like, is this the right thing to do? Or, can we actually do it this way? We're thinking of doing this. What do you think? And so you become more of an advisory service rather than an actual traditional, data entry.
Well, that's what it was. And I'm excited for the world of payroll. We just need to get some new talent. I think we need to get some younger generation, because we were laughing about it last night. We were like, back in there's a payroll manager there, and her brother's in it, her auntie's in it, and her mum's in it in payroll. And she was like, and it's like, that doesn't happen anymore. Would you tell your kids to get into payroll?
Oh, my elder son was just like, I am not doing payroll ever. He's not a numbers person, so probably not a bad thing. But yeah, it's
a lucrative career. You can earn good. It's a very good career. Like, if you're good, you've got a bit of personality. It's a really, really good career.
For me, I am super grateful for the career that I've had. And I love it. I had a discussion with my leader today, actually. And she's like, we just want to make sure that you're still challenged. I'm like, I'm super challenged. That's not, you don't have to worry about that, that aspect of it. But for me, it's all about that kind of constant challenge and knowing that, we can still, there's so much still to achieve. It's not the end of the road. But you just got to be open to that and be willing to do things that don't cost money.
Yeah. What do you think's next for you then, though?
For me, I've still got some things that I want to achieve, definitely, in the organisation that I'm in now.
Yeah, for sure.
But for me, it's doing more of this sort of stuff as well.
Yeah.
And as much as I hate public speaking, I do some breakfast talks, and did one with Nilly. It's about just sharing that knowledge, right? And if I can help another organisation by sharing some of the stuff that we've done, then I feel like it's about me giving back, right? I kind of go, yes, there's still definitely stuff that I want to achieve, have I achieved everything? Absolutely not.
No.
Do I want to be CEO? Absolutely not. Right? That's not my ambition in life. But for me, it's all around still continuing to bring value to the organisation that I work with, still being able to mentor and coach people that are working for me, and then giving back to the industry that's been so good to me.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, that's really important.
I love that. I think that's what I'm trying to do as well with my events and this. And, this is not a revenue stream in any way, and it takes a lot of time and organisation, but I see how hard the community works, and I can see how hungry they are for support. And I speak to payroll people all day, every day. They're just lost and they don't have the guidance. And that's why I wanted to do this, and that's why I'm doing all the events, and that's why we've obviously did the first episode of the Payroll Social. You'll have to come to the next one. My organisational skills are terrible. But the next one will be for my first year anniversary of the payroll agency. I think it's important for people to have people to ask questions and support them outside of just like a formal thing. And the likes of yourself is so valuable to that community, because they're lost. They don't know. They don't have access to you and all so it's good. So is there anything you think we haven't covered that you're like, any last little things that you can think that back of, I would have loved that piece of information when I was,
I definitely think, for me, it would be great to see payroll being promoted as a career in schools and stuff. And I know that
Nilly's doing that,
and all of that is doing it, which is fantastic, right? Because it is something that you don't even think about as from a career perspective when you're thinking, you're in year 10, you're trying to work out what you want to do with your life. It's not something that typically comes up, right? You still hear a lot of people, I fell into payroll. No one kind of has picked it as a kind of a career from the outbox. And I definitely think that, people also go, but for example, I don't have any payroll qualifications. from a piece of paper.
Is there any? Is there any
is.
real ones?
There is.
Oh,
there is.
there you go. I don't know.
But it's about learning on the job. It's about going to courses. It's about staying up to date with your legislation and so on, right? So, yes, I do have a HR degree and I decided to do that. Interestingly enough, it barely covered payroll, which was quite interesting at that point in time. But for me, it's around that whole, well, how do we promote it as a career, right, from day one, so that people just go, I really want to have a career in
that's
payroll.
exciting.
It's
I'm excited about that.
Exactly. And I think that's where, as AI comes in and does some of those manual tasks and so on, and payroll teams become more consultative and more of an advisory, and yes, absolutely staying on top of all the legislation and that compliance governance space, is that people will want to come in and do that, right? Like they will want to go, oh, that's the career I want, rather than kind of, now to find people who really want to do data entry from day one. I still think there's a really important aspect of learning it from the ground up.
You need to know.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
you need to know. And I got a bit of flack in one of my organisations. We were offshoring, and we trained the whole team, and we made them do it on paper. We made them do termination calcs on paper.
You have to.
Right? So, and they were like, but I don't understand because your system does the calculation. I'm like, but how would you know if the system's done it correctly or not if you don't
the
actually
system goes
understand?
down? What if it goes down?
Exactly. So I still think there's definitely some stuff that, you need the core basics to be taught. But I think it's just promoting all of the other stuff, right? So that people see that it is a proper career, right? It's not just something that you do for a couple of years and,
No,
move on to something else.
Look, the money you can make is a lot. It's highly, the responsibility is it's up there in terms of, like, if your company doesn't get paid, especially if you're unionized, they have the right to walk off site.
Yeah.
That is catastrophic for businesses. So you guys have the responsibility, as you said, it's now analytical. There's risk, there's compliance, there's governance. It's like, I think it's a great career, and I'm trying to support. I was on the phone to Nilly this morning, and she was, sending me a couple of people. We're going to try and get them into the market and things like that. And I'm trying to push her incentive as much as I can. I had her on so she could talk about it. But I think we do need a fresh talent in the market. But when you said about teaching them from scratch, that's so important, because I've got a generation of payroll people that have only ever learned it via the system, and when they go into a new company, if the system isn't exactly the same, they can't figure out if it's correct. They don't know if it's correct. So, and you'll speak to someone with 5 years payroll experience, senior payroll officer, and they can't tell you what the calculation is. And that's creating a really big issue in the market at the moment. So I think it's really important that payroll managers take time to train their team. Go back to the basics. Just do a refresher course every other year. Or, every time you get someone onboarding, here's your key calculations, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, we could talk about that for ages. But anything else you can think of?
No. But, great career, great opportunities.
Yes.
So.
And watch this space for you, Val. You're going to be doing lots more of this stuff.
Not sure. Not for the rest of this year anyway. I'm like, you're my last one for the year. Let's see. My husband goes, oh, you always do this to yourself. But I'm like, no, it's an important part.
Yeah, it is.
And
Thank you
it's
so
a
much.
passion, so it's easy to talk about.
Thank you. Thank you
welcome.
so much.
Thank you so much
Cheers.
for having me.
Cheers. Mine's finished. I think that was like, but cheers. And thank you guys for listening.
I'm going to practice then, and then I'll open the bottle. I was with another company before, and they told me I wasn't allowed to have Prosecco in the podcast room.
Why not?
Because I'm not trusted, because if it's the damage is, but I'm allowed water. I was like, do you not know how technology works? It's the same thing. If you spill water on the technology, it's the same thing. So I left and I came here.
Love it.
Bottle of mum.
Nice.
Michael goes, it's Val Flight, get a nice bowl.
Love it. I didn't know it was that special.
It's Val Flight. But it was on offer. It was $38.
Hey, it's better than a $6 bottle, right?
Yeah,
so I won't complain.
Yay!
Yay, payroll.
Yeah, payroll.